and welcome to Guitarist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.guitarist.com. My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and I'd like to welcome to the show once again Jeremy Edge, the guitar player from the Jeremy Edge Project. I've interviewed Jeremy several times over the years, and I think like a lot of people, Jeremy, I first became aware of you through your other band, Candlelight Red. Now, before we get too much into the interview, I'd like to ask, are you still part of Candlelight Red? Is that still an active band?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it. Sort of, yes and no. I guess you could say the band isn't like
broken up or anything. Yeah,
it's like that. Not like there was a falling out or anything. It's just we're just not doing anything.
I got you.
We did do last year. We went in the studio. We went back in the studio with Morgan Rose and did a 4-song EP.
Yeah.
And we put that out last year, and that was just kind of, a little thing to throw out to the fans.
Yeah.
Still done the music, and it was cool to go back and write and play and record with him again, and do some hard rock stuff,
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is, when we interview people, we like to give a little background on the person we're interviewing, and so just so people can check that out. Now, I would say, to me, Candlelight Red, like you were saying, is a little more hard rock, metal influence, whereas the Jeremy Edge Project, to me, it's still rock, but what I really dig about, if you're going to do a different band, for one thing, you don't want to be a carbon copy of the previous band. You hopefully are going to sound a little different, and that's kind of what this is, and to me, this is more kind of, it's still rock, but it's more blues-based rock with... kind of like sounds like hard rock blues to me, a little more bluesy. I could see if the Jeremy Edge band project was around back in the 70s, I could see you opening for bands like Cream or BB King or any number of bands. And so talk a little bit about that, because it's definitely a different sound.
Well, I guess it comes from me having a couple of older sisters,
Yeah.
They were in their teens when I was born, and they were a big impression on me. They were always running around listening to music, listening to albums, and going to concerts and stuff. And my dad was a musician. He was, late 50s, early 60s musician, and he was quite successful. He actually wrote a song for Gene Benson.
Oh, wow.
That went to, number 3. So we had... we had that in the family,
In
so
your DNA,
I was around all of my dad's records and his collection and stuff that he would listen to, and me and my dad went and saw Stevie Ray Vaughan when I was 12, 13 years old, but growing up out of that and getting into bands and playing stuff, I joined, I guess it was around the late 90s, early 2000s with a band in Pennsylvania called Backstreet Law.
Okay.
And basically they wanted to do newer stuff, alternative stuff, so we did stuff that was pretty heavy and pretty much cutting edge at the time. When you're in your 20s,
sure,
you want to be cutting edge. You don't want to be anybody telling you, you're playing that old school music.
Yeah.
Thank God for people like Joe Bonamassa, who's even through those periods, he's stuck to his gun. It's nope, this is what I'm doing. I don't care what the trends are.
Yeah.
But we were young, and it was we want to get a record deal. We want to get on tour, and that band kind of broke up. And then I tried to kind of do something like I'm doing now, and I just couldn't. In my area, I couldn't find anybody who wanted to do it. So he basically Candlelight Red was almost like an extension of what I had done before.
Yeah.
With going back into the modern rock stuff, which was cool, and we tried to make it as creative as possible and not be too much like everything else. But at the end of the day,
oh, sure.
I'd be on tour with, say, guitar players like Rashid from Nonpoint. He was like, man, you can play like this blues stuff and all these licks and stuff. He's like, I don't hear you playing me that. And I was like, yeah, you should be playing that.
Wow. So that's quite a lot of information there. Let me ask now, you mentioned Stevie Ray Vaughan being one of your earliest influences. How old were you when you first saw him?
I was 12.
Oh, wow. So moving ahead, do you remember hearing about his death and the helicopter crash? What was that like as a fan? You think, oh wow, I saw that guy. Wow, he's dead.
Yeah, and it was. I think that was one of the first times like me and my dad really bonded over music.
Yeah.
That was music from his generation too, in a way. Like we actually saw Stevie Ray Vaughan and Lonnie Mack.
Oh,
and
wow.
my dad told me about Lonnie Mack, and he was a big fan of him. So it was really cool. But yeah, when I heard about that, I was working in a music store. It was like one of my first jobs.
Wow.
Like right when I got out of high school at like 17 or so. And I was working at Steve Watson, the guitar player in Greenville, South Carolina, his music store, and I heard we got the news, and I was just I couldn't believe it. But I was like, man, this like I wouldn't be playing guitar if it weren't for that guy and getting to see that. So, but back then you had no idea that he was going to be as big as he is now. He was big back then.
Oh, sure.
But now it's like, he's legendary,
In fact, it's amazing the legacy he has. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, he was so very young when he died. And yet look at all the great albums, look at all the great music he was able to release in that little bit of a lifespan he had. And I mean, you take that a step further, you look at somebody like Randy Rhoads. People consider him like one of the all-time greatest guitar players ever. But when you consider the fact, Randy Rhoads' legacy is really only those 2 Ozzy albums. And, and yet, look what they were able to do, those 2 guys,
Absolutely. And it's like, I really admire players like that, like Randy Rhoads or Eddie Van Halen or Jimi Hendrix, because they were able to, at a young age, they knew exactly what they wanted to do, and they got all that music out and made that statement when they were very young. And some of us, like me, it takes a while for me to kind of like trial and error and figure out, well, this is how you do it, and this is what I want to do,
I mean, you take a guy like Hendrix, he had a couple things going for him. I mean, he was kind of a triple threat. I mean, ultimate like guitar hero back in the ultimate guitar player. He could play the guitar like crazy, and he on stage, I mean, he would do everything from setting the guitar on fire to playing the guitar, with his teeth and stuff like that. And so he was also a great showman, great songwriter, great singer. He was one of the guys could do it all.
Oh, absolutely. And that's kind of the golden era, Hendrix, Cream, Deep Purple, Sabbath, that's kind of what we're trying to bring back, is sort of the spirit of that music without it being a carbon copy of that music.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up Sabbath because, if anybody looks at what you're doing today with the Jeremy Edge project, they're like, oh, wow, that guy was influenced by, he's mentioning Sabbath, but, you can be influenced more than one type of music, I think, and that makes you, I think, a much more rounded musician, because then you take things from Sabbath maybe and Stevie Ray and that's why your music sounds the way it does.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big melting pot of all the. Ideally, you wanted to be a melting pot of all the stuff you really did, or the best aspects of it.
And Tony Iommi, I mean, he was a real pioneer, because I dare say he often gets credit for creating that metal sound. Because if you think about it, the very reason he plays the way he does is because of being in that accident, getting the tips of his fingers chopped off, and so there is that too.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. He's still my favorite Ozzy guitar player, just because his guitar tone was always the best, his riffs were the best, and his leads, like he could just bend one note and immediately that's Tony. Yeah,
and Eddie Van Halen you mentioned. I mean, he's probably like the premier guitar player from the '80s, at least, or one of them. And it's kind of interesting that people are always amazed when they find out he could not read a lick of music, but yet look what that guy was able to do with the guitar. And people are even more amazed when they find out he started out, on the piano and on the drums, and then ultimately switched over to the guitar.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big influence. While I was still in high school, I was in a a band where like the other two guys in the high school band, but they were just kind of like Van Halen freaks, and I swear I think we learned half the catalog. You know, we didn't play it all right because we were like 15 years old, you know, but you know, some of it was pretty close, you know, but it was fun, you know, so fun.
Yeah, and so now Jeremy, you got to. I love the fact that the new album is it out yet? Did it come out last week? Is that correct?
It's sort of out. You know, the music scene today is such a new Wild West.
Yeah.
We just decided to break a few rules. So the album's coming out in sections on Spotify.
Okay.
And but we have everything available to order. The LPs are available for pre-order on our merch store. And
do you have an official release date? Is it sometime in December?
So yeah, if you're looking to stream it, and it would be on all the digital platforms, December 23rd, Volume 1 will be dropping, and I think around February 2nd, Volume 2 will be dropping.
Well, you know, I love that for a simple fact. Volume 1's coming out like 2 days before Christmas. I mean, what? Talk about the ultimate release date, the ultimate kind of Christmas present, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I didn't plan it that way. It was just, you know.
The way it worked out, but you know.
Yeah, we were working on this album for well over a year, and it just finally had to kind of get it out, you know.
And I love the fact that it's going to be a double album because, you know, like you said, the music industry is a lot different than when you and I were growing up. I mean, people just don't understand. I miss the days of going to a record store. You know, I live in Los Angeles, and the closest record store is about an hour away, you know, Amoeba Records in Hollywood, you know. And I mean, if you want to get something at the local Target, maybe you'll find the Beach Boys' greatest hits, but that's about it, you know. Everything is ordered online, you know, these days. And I really miss the days of going to a record store, spending hours in there. I mean, I remember like picking up Kiss Destroyer for the very first time before I even knew anything about Kiss or where I just like, I don't know what the hell this is, but it looks so cool. I have to get this.
Yeah, it's the same. And we're really targeting, even if people are streaming it or listening to the CD version, we really kind of balance this record to feel like you're listening to an album no matter what. And, you know, it's just the days of growing up with that music. Part of the experience is getting the album and putting it on and kind of shutting off the world and getting lost in that music. And we kind of, you know, whether you're actually doing that or putting it in your car or whatever, we kind of have that whole experience in mind. And we kind of know that that's not the average listener. Like nowadays, the average listener's attention span is like 15, 30 seconds.
I mean, it's amazing. I got in a discussion with this guy the other day about, because, you know, I am an avid like CD collector, and you should see my room. I got like a pile, you know, up to here, and they're like, yeah, man, but look at all these CDs you have, man. I got everything, you know, digitally. You don't even have to worry about laying it somewhere, having space in your house. I'm like, yeah, but you know, it's something different. Or like you're saying, people these days will tell you, I'm not going to buy the whole album. I'll just buy the single, or you know, the latest single or whatever. And to me, what's different too about that is back in the day, people that were really into music like us, Jeremy, you would support the bands you loved. Not only would, and it was different too because you didn't have the internet, and so you didn't know what they were going to play when they came and played a concert in your town, you know. So you'd go out and buy the album, and it just really is a different world, and that's why it's amazing guys like you are still out there releasing new music.
Yeah, for me, if somebody doesn't want something physical and they just want to play the stuff on their phone,
you got your choice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. You know, I hope they would eventually come to it. If they dig it, come to a show, buy a T-shirt, do anything to support the band, because we did this on an amazing budget because we had the help of some great friends to do it, but it still costs money. So streaming really doesn't pay anything.
Oh, sure.
So it is that's the struggle, but so far, you know, it's been pretty cool, the reactions. We just played a show with Gary Hoey.
Oh, wow.
The 25th, and his crowd really dug it, and I think we moved, I want to say I think about 30, 40 people walked out with CDs.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Which surprised me because everyone say, CD is a dead medium, but I guess you got still a lot of folks who want the ability to just stick something in the player, hit play.
Yeah, that's me.
You don't have to fiddle with your phone while you got the GPS going. You know.
I mean, too. The thing with that is, I mean, I guess these days phones can store a lot, but after a while, you know, you got to start erasing stuff so you have room on the phone. But yeah, I love to like, I got a CD player in my car, and on the way to work, I'm always listening to some music, or on the way home. But in any event, see, that's the thing too. If somebody goes to see your band and they like the band good enough, and you're selling the CD at the show, that's the thing, because a lot of times people come to a show, maybe they're just, you know, their friend told you that you guys were playing a concert, never heard about the Jeremy Ayers project before that night, and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool stuff. Oh, they're selling the CD? Yeah, okay, I'll buy it. But, you know, just imagine if you weren't selling the CD at the shows, you know?
Oh, yeah, and we try to be there to actually either sell them or help sell them ourselves, and meet folks, and actually, you know, it's cool, you know, you get to meet people, actually talk about the songs and talk about, you know, what you're doing, and get a, you know, a feel for what's in the minds of other music lovers, you know.
Oh, sure. And, you know, other thing I love, Jeremy, about the fact is that it's a double album. I mean, is that a combination of, you know, the last 3 years of all the lockdowns because of COVID and not being able to get out there and playing, so you just had an abundance of time to record these songs, or did you just say, oh, we have
I mean, it sort of is. I had a lot of songs written.
Yeah.
And I am sort of a rebellious type. I'm one of those things, like, I can't find where he said it, but years ago I remember reading that Geddy Lee said about Rush. He goes, we try to always understand contemporary trends.
Yeah.
Even if it's something that we decide that we like and we're going to incorporate it, or if we decide that it's something we don't like and we want to be the antithesis of that. And during the lockdowns, it seems like everybody was doing, let's do a cover song from our living room, you know, or everyone's saying, oh, well, it's a singles world anymore. Nobody's bothering with albums. And I just kind of wanted to rebel and to say, hey, you know, this is I didn't start doing this to put out singles or covers. I did this to make records.
I mean, I like that attitude because, again, a lot of people are just living on their catalog of music. And I mean, as far as the Jeremy Edge project goes, this is, I believe, your second album. And so for this being your second album, with it being a double album, you've got an abundance of material now, too, to draw from, you know, when you do play live. And that's, I think that's a cool thing. You know, you're really delivering the goods, as they say.
Yeah, it makes you, when you go and look at the greats like the Beatles and Hendrix and Zeppelin and Cream and Stevie Ray Vaughan, you see the incredible amount of music and things that they created within such a short amount of time. And now you have artists that are paid handsomely to sit around for 5 years and not release anything.
I mean, the greatest example of that is, you know, Guns N' Roses, and from what I understand, Axl Rose is this, like, he's this, I guess, musical genius or whatever you want to call, but like he's so much a perfectionist that he's got an abundance of material, but it's like, okay, will we finally get a Guns N' Roses album maybe 15 years from now? We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
I think the model for me is, you know, a few years ago, I discovered, probably around 2017, I want to say, I discovered Rival Sons.
Oh, okay, yeah, definitely.
And I didn't know that they had several albums already. You know, I heard the song Pressure and Time.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so good. I think I listened to it 7 times in a row, and my ears were ringing when I was done. I was just like, how did I not know about this band? And then I go and look, and that's like, oh, they got the Great Western Valkyrie. Like, they got all these records that I never knew existed. And it's like finding a treasure trove. So, you know, I'm cool, you know, if I'm the underdog and I don't get to be the darling that everybody's talking about the record. I hope somebody someday, years from now, discovered me and is like, wow, this dude put out the double album, he put out this record, you know, and I hope they go back and dig the music, you know, even if it don't happen right now, you know.
But, you know, Rival Sons is a great example of what you're talking about because, you know, they'd been around, like you said, for a number of years, and then only all of a sudden, you know, once they have a breakout album, does everybody start going out and buying their stuff. But you know, they're the diehards. Have been with them since the beginning, and they're the true fans. But that's what's cool, because again, and that's kind of your story too, because you did something different, like with Candlelight Red, and so you got a certain number of your core fans that maybe are going to follow you over from that. But then there are people just discovering you from the Jeremy Edge project. They know nothing about what you did before, and that's got to be kind of a cool feeling. Like, you know, yeah, I did this little band over here before, but you know, people are just discovering you now for what you're doing today.
Yeah, definitely. It is cool. Every once in a while, it's cool to meet somebody and they're like, "Hey, you guys are pretty good. You know, wouldn't it be cool if you were on tour? Or you got to do this." And I'm like, "Well,
we're doing it."
We had a crazy couple of years a few years ago. You know.
Yeah, and you know, but the other thing too, Jeremy, I got to say that I think you're a type of guitar player that if you wanted to, you could probably go out and have a band where it's nothing but like shredded guitar solos and where everything's based around the guitar. But see, I think that's the difference in your style of playing, in that not only this, what you're doing now, more blues like influenced rock, but it's to me, you come across as great as a guitar player. It's all kind of song written oriented, if you know what I mean. It's based around the song and what works best for each song.
I think it's always one of those things, like being me jumping into the singer-songwriter seat, and you know, and engineering some of this stuff myself. I had to put on the producer's hat.
Yeah.
And it's like you almost have a war between the guitar player and the producer.
Yeah.
You know? And the producer always wins, and even if it's me. So, yeah, there's definitely. Every time I used to go say I'm going to record stuff, I'm going to be like, man, I'm going to lay down some like shrapnel record worthy like
yeah.
We're gonna just like tear this apart. And then when I start recording, I'm just like, yeah, I gotta make something that serves the song. It's gotta, you know, like the song we released, "Move On." You know, Derek had created all these moody spaces in the solo section, whereas almost I felt like I needed to just play minimally, you know, like Blackmore would, you know, and just make the guitar sing and talk and not try to, you know, see, it's like see like how fast can I play the Eric Johnson's Fives lick, you know.
You talking about Derek Sherraning, the keyboard player. Now, does he play just on the one song or throughout the album?
He played on a song called "Move On," which we just released, and he also plays on a song called "Hell Ride." And we actually do like a little, almost a little prog rock, little arpeggio section in that. You know, we had to do a little bit of shredding, you know, somewhere on the record.
And how did you hook up with Derek? Because I tell you, he's one of the most in demand keyboard players this time, and I agree with something David Coverdale said, which is that he's the bastard son of the late great John Lord. I think what he meant was, you know, a lot of people, you hear him say how keyboards suck, they don't belong in rock music. But I often tell people, well, you go and you look at those early Deep Purple albums, listen to what John Lord was doing, and then you say that, you know.
Oh, absolutely. The organ. I grew up on records that had organ on it, and we always wanted the overdriven organ and that whole thing, because I just think it's just so cool. I think we started conversing on Twitter like a couple years ago when I sent him my first record, and he was like, "Yeah, we should work together down the road. You know, we should do something." And I kind of, you know, got into doing this, and he messaged me. Like, I hadn't spoken to him in a year, and I think he saw me posting and messaged me. He says, "Hey, are you gonna send me some tracks to play on?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, let's do it." You know, so I did. I think he would have played on the whole record.
Yeah.
You know, we actually talked about that, but we had a lot of it done, and also there were budgets and time constraints.
Oh, sure.
So. You know, maybe next record comes out, maybe we'll get the opportunity to do that. But we've been working with Live. We've been working when he's available with Charlie from Angel.
Oh, wow.
And he's a great keyboard player too. Me and my bass player, we went out. Like my bass player drove to Binghamton, New York, to a 1962 Leslie 145, and so we actually went out and bought a Hammond organ and a Leslie,
Oh,
and
wow.
we were just like, whoever plays keys with us, it's like as long as there's room on stage for it, it's like we already have a rig, we already got everything ready to go.
Yeah, I had a chance to interview Derek about his latest solo a couple of months back, and super cool, friendly, down to earth guy. And he was telling me, that even though he's a keyboard player, he's saying it's funny because he loves like guitar oriented stuff. And he said, for example, Van Halen had that big hit with "Jump" off of their 1984 album. He says, I love that song, I love that album. He goes, but you know what? When it came out, I really hated it because he's like, what happened to the guitar, Eddie? It's all keyboards. He's like, and here I'm a keyboard player, Yeah, and so, but in regards to the Jeremy Edge project, is it this, like, do you have a steady band that you record and tour with? Or do you have different guys coming in and playing on the tracks?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I have my bass player John's been with me from the beginning. Ray started playing with us from the beginning for drums, and we went through a period where we went through a couple drummers, then Ray came back.
Okay.
And he's been with us ever since. And I've had a few session drummers play on a few things, like the debut record and stuff like that. But a lot of times, we actually started calling it the Jeremy Edge Project instead of it just being Jeremy Edge, because we were using a lot of collaborators. Like, we got a guy named Byron Winchester who comes in and plays harmonica sometimes when he can. He played on the record. In the first record we did, we had a lot of guests. We had guest singers and a guest keyboardist, and in the first record I actually had Josh Smith, who now plays with Joe Bonamassa.
Oh wow!
Contributed a solo to that, which was very cool. We were actually originally talking about me trying to fly to California and recording an EP in Josh's studio, but time and budget and we couldn't work it out where I could get out there at the right time. But fortunately he was cool about that, and I said, will you play a solo on my record? And he's like, sure, and sent one over, and he killed it.
Yeah, and we were talking a little bit about Deep Purple, and you mentioned a couple times Joe Bonamassa, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but speaking of Deep Purple, he had another band a couple years back called Black Country Communion with of course Glenn Hughes fronting that band, who previously was in Deep Purple.
Oh yeah, we're big Black Country Communion fans. Of course, and I've followed Joe Bonamassa for years, and I don't know. I think it's almost like in the blues community, it's almost like there's certain guys who are like too cool to say they like Joe Bonamassa. And I'm like, come on, man.
I mean, I would put you.
Dude's like literally the best guitar player I've ever seen. I'm being pretty. I'm okay at guitar playing, so I kind of. When I watch his fingers, I know. And when I've seen him live a couple times, and I'm going like, yeah, this dude's he's otherworldly. I mean, he's on freaking real. I mean,
I would put you in the same class as him. I'll tell you why. Because Jeremy, both of you, what I think you have in common is your music is blues based, but it's got like a rock kind of edge to what you guys are doing. Whereas somebody like B.B. King, he could do some rock and blues too, but his was much more blues oriented, and I think that's what's cool about players like you and Joe. You're still doing the blues thing, but you're kind of rocking it up and doing something a little different.
Yeah, I think I was drawn to him because I already had common influences. Yeah. Because when I grew up listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, I also had Al Di Meola's Casino, Elegant Gypsy album. So that right there is like the guy who taught everyone how to pick every note, So when I listen to Joe, I can't help but hear, tons of Al Di Meola. Although he doesn't talk about him, I'm watching his right hand going like, dude, that's totally Al's technique. And then, the Eric Johnson thing, I've listened to Eric Johnson for years, and I'm like, immediately, I hear all the Eric Johnson and Joe, and I'm like, but it's so cool, he probably took a lot of flack for incorporating some of that stuff into blues, from the old timers to say, well, that stuff doesn't belong there. But I'm glad he stuck to his guns and made something that was pretty unique, authentic.
Yeah, I was curious. Are you at all a fan of Steve Morse, who recently?
Oh, I love Steve
Yeah,
Morse.
Kansas Deep Purple. Yeah, he recently left Deep Purple. Yeah, but that's amazing in itself. That you would have thought, who the hell could they ever get to replace Richie Blackmore? But then he was in the band longer than Richie ever was in the band, and Richie's the guy that formed the band. It's just amazing. He was able to kind of join up with Deep Purple and kind of leave his own mark in the band.
Oh, I love Blackmore is one of my favorites.
Oh, sure.
I had Made in Japan on vinyl when I was a kid. I always say he has like the most unique phrasing, and it's so laid back. Almost, if I try to when I'm trying to emulate him, I almost have to tell myself to play so far behind the beat that I'm going backwards in time.
Yeah. Well,
that's how relaxed and how easy and smooth it is. It's just so cool.
And I got to ask, have you ever heard any of the stuff he's doing these days with Blackmore's Night? That's the band he has with his wife, and she sings in it. And it sounds nothing like Deep Purple or Rainbow. But I'll tell you, your publicist Chip years ago when he was working with Richie, he sent me a copy of one of the CDs. And I thought, okay, I'm a Richie Blackmore fan. I'm going to check this out. And it was quite different from what I expected it to be. But you know what? After I got done listening, I thought, okay, it's not Deep Purple, but you know what? It's not bad. It's different. I think people just have to have an open mind when they listen to stuff.
It's definitely kind of that Ren Fair music thing. But, you can hear, if you listen to Deep Purple, the reason some of their stuff is so unique is he was introducing some of those
neoclassical,
the gypsy scales and the Middle Eastern scales and the Celtic music was all coming through his arrangements and his melodies and everything. It's wild. If you listen to, like, there's a song off Perfect Strangers called Hungry Days.
Oh, yes.
In the outro, John Lord and Richie are just trading licks in this weird, like, Middle Eastern minor key that it's like, I learned the scale and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I can't even wrap my head around it. So I mean, he's been studying that stuff for years. So it's kind of like, Ginger Baker brought an African drumming element to Cream, and then when Ginger Baker went on to pursue drumming after the 70s rock bands, he moved to Africa and played with African musicians, because he wanted to learn more about that music. So it makes a lot of sense what Richie's doing.
Yeah, I heard an interview he did like a couple years back, and he was talking about how everybody is always saying what a great song, Smoke on the Water, and his attitude is like, everybody loves that song for whatever reason. He's like, I like it too. Everybody thinks it's a great song. It's a good song. It's not my favorite. And I'm like, okay, but can you imagine like a guy like Richie Blackmore? How many times you must have played that song? Maybe, I guess you do get a little tired of it after a while.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's such a cool song.
Yeah.
It's so simple and straightforward, but if you listen to the entire song, there's so much nuance and intricacy and everything that's going on. That riff is pretty much the only thing that's simple. And when he starts the song, like I've seen cover bands play it, the thing is he doesn't use any open strings, and he plucks the riff with his fingers. So it's like, anyway, people joke and say, well, it's the first thing you learn on guitar. And I'm just saying, like, it's the one riff I've never seen a guitar player play right.
Oh, wow. Another player I wanted to ask you if you were influenced by, how about Pete Townsend? Are you all a Who fan?
My drummer Ray is a huge Who fan. I'm like selective. There's certain
songs
Who stuff that I'm crazy about, like Baba O'Reilly.
Yeah, that's my favorite right there.
Like that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like Robin Trower.
Okay, I got you. Wow.
So that's one of my big favorites. Deep Purple was huge. Sabbath was huge. Zeppelin is like a religion, in my house. That's ZZ Top, another band that's like basically a religion, because it's so.
Yeah. Now I got to ask you, in regards to Sabbath, obviously, Iommi was one that was really an influence on you there, but probably like a lot of people, you start with Sabbath with Ozzy, but what did you think of the Ozzy era versus the Dio era?
Well, I liked that stuff too. So this is funny. People tell me this. I was 8 or 9.
Wow, yeah.
I I was big into music when I was a little kid because I had a record player and I had access to my sister's record collection. So of course I had toys, but I was the weird kid that liked to listen to records.
Yeah, you did.
My favorite records were Black Sabbath. So my sister took me to see Black Sabbath when I was like 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
And I had all the record covers, and I'd seen I knew the 4 guys that were in the band. And I remember this vaguely as we sat down and we got tour guides.
Yeah.
And I opened the tour guides and it says vocals, Ronnie James Dio. And I'm like,
who is that? Yeah.
Like, Candy, who's this guy? He's like, well, I guess they got a new singer. This will be good. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. and sure. And from what I remember, very little I can remember. It was good, Well, it was good enough. That was what I wanted to do forever. But I loved Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell.
Heaven and Hell, yeah.
It's just a different
sound, yeah. Obviously, I think there's no denying that there are 2 different types of singers, but I think no denying Ronnie is a much more better songwriter. In fact, a lot of people don't even realize that for earlier Sabbath, it was Geezer that wrote most of the lyrics for the song. So. That's kind of interesting. I'll say, if you're at all a Ronnie James Dio fan, Jeremy, I urge you to, if you haven't already done so, check out the Dio movie. You can see it now on Showtime. They've been playing it there. It's called Dreamers Never Die, and it's like the whole story of Ronnie's, life, from childhood up until, Rainbow and Sabbath and everything right up to the very end of his life.
Yeah, it's wild because, as people didn't realize, like, Ronnie kind of started his solo career in 40s.
Oh yeah, and it's nothing to do with metal, and he had a little short. There's photos that you can if you do a search like online, type in Ronnie Dio and the Prophets, and that's way before even Elf, and he's got like short hair, and you wouldn't even know it was the same guy.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember reading he had Ronnie in the Red Caps.
Yeah, that was it.
He was a big Gene Vincent fan. So that kind of always struck me as like my dad, hung around and had friends with those guys in Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps.
Oh, wow.
Those guys were from South Carolina. And that's who I hung around with when I was a kid, was his friends, Johnny Meeks, who was one of Gene's guitar players, Bobby Jones, the bass player. So I grew up around that music, but it was almost like, well, it's not cool because it's dad's music. That's it.
Yeah. And now, Jeremy, aside from being the guitar player, you do sing on some of most of the songs when you have guest singers on some of the tracks, right?
Well, no, actually, the first album I had guest singers on a lot of the tracks, and this album I sang everything but the female backups.
Wow, okay.
That was a new one for me.
And I was going to ask, with the first album, was it because maybe you wanted it to be more of a collaborative, or were you nervous about, approaching the vocals? What was that process like for you?
So, last question, very nervous, but actually the way that album went down is the first blues-based band that I put together was was me and John and Ray, and we called it Black Star Sunrise. Okay. And we had a female singer.
Oh, wow.
Who was absolutely phenomenal.
I bet, yeah.
Like, people would, fall off their bar stools, as soon as they heard a note. And 2 days before we were supposed to go in the studio and track the vocals, she decided she was quitting music.
Oh, wow.
But I think she went and got, a cosmetology license, started a whole new career, and, things are going great for her and everything. So,
worked out for her.
Who am I to judge? But it kind of left me on the point. It was like, okay, now what do I do with this record?
Yeah.
And so the original intent was just to have it be a Santana thing, where I have a bunch of people, my friends, sing on it. And then I started working on some songs myself to kind of get an idea of lyrics and melody. And I was working in the studio with Mike and that, and we had Brandon from Crowbot. He was scheduled to come in later that day and track vocals. He comes in and listens to the playback of what we were working on, which was called Sunrise. And Brandon was like, man, I think it's great. You should just keep it. And I'm like, really? I had intended on singing. I was just of the opinion that, I didn't have this 5-octave range. I wasn't one of these virtuoso singers.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear me sing on the record, but everybody kind of pushed me to do it, and once they did, everybody was kind of like, hey, I like those tunes.
A lot of people have that story. I mean, you even look at somebody like David Lee Roth. I mean, I think most people say Sammy Hagar is a much better singer, but like Roth, for what he does and what he is, it works for him. You know what I mean? Van Halen with David Lee Roth is a very different band than they are with Sammy Hagar, but like I said, Roth is he knows, I guess, his limitations. He knows what he can and can't do, and he works with it. And I think he's been able to have a career doing it. And then there are other guys that have the same story of you, Jeremy. They thought, oh, nobody wants to hear me sing. But then I think part of the reason guys like that are able to do it is partly if you write the song, maybe you can sing it more from the heart. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that's got to be part of it. I think of, when Peter Frampton left Humble Pie, I know everyone was telling him he was crazy, and you could tell, Steve Marriott was one of the best singers of all time.
Yeah.
He was like a god, so I know Peter wasn't that great of a singer, so he probably faced a lot of flack and adversity, but then he come out with his live album and it ended up being like a record breaker,
Oh, sure.
Just because of the songs, and I do think there is a connection if people hear you sing. If you have a very personal song or something that you put a lot of heart into, I think it comes across delivered different than if you have somebody else sing.
Even in reference to your first album, like you're talking, all these great singers come in and singing your songs. But again, if you were to go in and like I'm gonna release a version of this album with me doing the vocals. It's the same songs, but it'd be a very different delivery, like you said. I mean, and because people can come in, they could be a super talented singer. They can kind of put their spin on your tunes, and that's usually what happens. But oftentimes you might feel, they're not doing the song the way I wrote it or the way I heard it in my head.
Yeah, well, we actually did some collaborative writing between myself and Brandon and Brett Heslow, who sang on the first record. And they did a phenomenal job.
Sure.
It has been one of those things where, years ago, for all these years I thought I was a songwriter, but really I was writing music and having somebody put lyrics to it. And now it's kind of, with this record, a lot of these songs started with me on the acoustic guitar coming up with a lyric and a chord progression and okay, what's the song about, what's it trying to communicate, and so I never had written songs like that, and I'm seeing how those songs are kind of connecting with people, and I'm thinking, wow, it's almost like I was learning to have a vocabulary before, but I'm now actually using that to actually speak the language. Even a guitar player, writes music and is considered a songwriter, but typically, you might just be your job in the band might just to be to come up with the riffs, and then you typically have a singer who might, they worry about the lyrics and stuff, but so you're kind of really advancing your game as far as the songwriting goes, because like you said, you're having to work with a different brain kind of it's a different process maybe from what you are used to. And I think being blues based too, if you notice, a lot of the blues players are not just great players, but a lot of them would take a guy like Chuck Berry. You didn't go see Chuck Berry and have anybody else, singing his tunes. He was doing it. And, he may not have been the greatest singer to begin with, but probably over time of his illustrious career, like anything you do, the more you do it, you become much better. But look at all those blues guys. Typically, they all sing their own songs. So I think that's a little more accepted, in doing blues music. Yeah, it is. And I'm also finding, as I'm getting more into it, that when I first started doing it, I hardly ever sang or used my vocal cords, so I was a lot of getting my bearings. And now that I've been doing it for a while, I'm singing things. I remember, the guys were like, "Hey, we should, encore with Mississippi Queen." 2 years ago, I was like, "I'll never be able to sing that." And then we did it, a couple of weeks ago. We did it, and I was like, "Well, that really wasn't that hard, as hard as I thought it was going to be."
Yeah.
Because I'm just learning more and more, and it's becoming more natural, and how to. Even since I recorded the vocals for this record, I feel like I'm probably twice the singer I am now when I I recorded that because most of these vocals are kind of lower to mid register, and I've been slowly getting more and more comfortable with higher registers and being more powerful with it.
And I imagine too, as far as in reference to like performing live, you got a lot more responsibilities now than just playing the guitar parts. And what I mean is, you might think, okay, well, I'm gonna have a show tonight, so don't want to be doing a lot of talking, or a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. Got to keep the voice, in shape. And you weren't having to think about stuff like that. Have you guys? I don't imagine you've done any live shows to promote this yet, or what's the plans as far as touring behind this?
Actually, we've been playing all year.
Oh, wow,
We've been playing some of the songs out, which is kind of cool. I got to see, who would react to songs I never heard before, so yeah, we've been playing pretty steady throughout the year. We did a bunch of our own shows. There's some outdoor festivals. We did a show with Lita Ford, one with Jack Bull, one with Derek St. Holmes, Gary Hoey.
Wow.
So it's been a very good year for us for live shows. And yeah, I've gotten to get a lot more practice at it. And it's the thing I noticed is it tires, even though I'm not like running around the stage anymore. I'm going to change the mic. It's exhausting to sing and play guitar.
And how hard is it to not just have to concentrate on your guitar parts, but remembering like the lyrics and all that?
It's weird. I think everyone struggles with, a lot of people struggle with lyrics, and I've always been one of those people that I just always remember lyrics.
Yeah.
And and I think I've been in bands where I'd had to like transcribe lyrics for singers, remind them where the cues are and stuff. So I don't know. That's something that comes naturally for me.
Now, how about, because some people tell me that probably the hardest thing is not necessarily even remembering the lyrics, like you say, but singing, like being the lead singer and the guitar player at the same time. Playing your notes and doing the singing.
Yeah, I had a problem with that at first, and it's just like you said, repetition. As I do it more and more, it's getting easier and easier. Like when I first started doing it, I always used to be the guitar player that was. You always had drummers tell me they play guitar players who push the pocket and rush everything, and they're like, you almost pull me back. And I've always been that guy who's been very time oriented. But as soon as I started singing, I started noticing it's like, oh wow, I'm rushing this, I'm pushing the beat constantly. But this year, after doing so many shows, I've kind of gotten out of that, and my hand has gotten a lot more accurate with getting that rhythm back, and the tightness back.
And now, Jeremy, I want to ask you, this is, like we said, this is going to be a double album, so I think it's kind of cool that people are going to get the first volume, right before Christmas, and the next album's coming out in February. Have you thought, eventually, like, is it going to be released like where you can get both CDs together, or are you selling it separately?
Well, we've been selling packages on the website. You can get both. And originally we wanted this packaged as a double album where you open one side, and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, vinyl replication, when you call places, they're selling you anywhere from 9 months to a year to get a return on it, or they're telling you that they're not taking any new orders. And I happened to find a place in Europe that said, we're actually doing turnarounds in 90 days, but the catch is you're only limited to certain options with the artwork and stuff. So we had to do it as two separate vinyls to make that.
Oh, okay. And people can get it too on CD, right, if they want?
Oh yes.
Okay, and then the thing I think with that too that's kind of cool, selling it's kind of a two separate volumes, is with inflation, everything being what it is today, it's much more financially better for people. Okay, well, I'll buy volume 1 when it comes out, and then I'll buy the other volume in February when it comes out. I think a lot more people will be able to afford it that way too.
Right, and it's cool if people want to buy them both at once, but it's almost like I wanted to see reactions with people digest the first 8 songs and then go back and then a month or two later and check out the other 8 songs and go on a different journey.
And let me ask you, once people
designed it that way.
once people get both volumes, okay, would you say that people playing like Volume 1 and Volume 2, let's say, once they're both released, do you think, would you say the songs like on Volume 1 are drastically different than Volume 2, or would you say they sound like they should be on the same album, if you know what I'm asking?
I think they sound like they should be on 16 different albums.
That's the beauty of that, though. I mean, okay, because you're really then delivering the goods. You're giving people something, a little different. And I think if you're going to have a double album, you don't want everything sounding the same.
Yeah, I mean, it would be weird for me to end up with like a major label saying like, well, we like this song, we want you to write all the songs mostly sounding like this. That would be very hard for me because this one's very all over the place. I mean, there's like, I've been told some of it sounds like Robin Trower.
Oh, wow.
There's a song that sounds like the song Bad Times sort of sounds like that, Heaven and Hell or Sabbath in a way, at least musically. And then you got there's a song on it that kind of was a tip of the hat to Sade.
Oh, wow. Now let me ask you, like when you do
that kind of thing, there's a gypsy swing tune on there, there's a reggae inspired tune on there, like it's all over the place.
Now, like the tune that you said somebody told you it sounded like Robin Trower, let me ask you, did you go in the studio and like I want to like write a song in the vein of Robin Trower? Or do you think it's just, since he's one of those guys that was a major influence, it's just kind of his influence coming out through your music?
I think every time I pick up the guitar, I'd like to sound like Robin Trower.
Who wouldn't, right? Yeah.
So, it's like every time, sometimes I hit, sometimes I miss, mostly miss, but every once in a while it's like, hey, that kind of has that sound. It's like, yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
And the very last thing I want to ask you about, Jeremy, is this is your record label is Deco Entertainment, is that correct?
Yes.
Great little label. How did you hook up with them? Because one thing, I just say they have a great roster of artists, and I really love the fact that, they seem to really get behind their artists and push all the releases, and they don't like push any one release, more than the other. I think they promote their roster of artists, equally.
Yeah, it's a great place for music lovers. Because they have a lot of releases, they specialize in a lot of vinyl, and they know the corners of the world and corners of the market that are really into vinyl. So I think that's really cool. And it's cool. It's like those guys are super laid back, and it's almost like this is a partnership. It's not like I'm beholden to this big, record label that's telling me what to do. They're just like, hey, let's make some music, let's put it out there, see if people buy it. And it's all, it's pretty awesome in that respect.
I mean, I think they have more of the I guess attitude that the record companies used to have. Like, let's try to build these artists up, or let's try to these guys are somewhat established. Get their, I mean, Deco, they've got a lot of people that already are established, and then they got, people like you, Jeremy, been rising star kind of the last couple of years, but they got a little bit of everything for everybody on the label. I mean, one guy that they have signed, I know, is Albert Bouchard, the drummer from Blue Oyster Cult. He's released a couple of solo albums the last couple of years, and he's a super talent. And Carmine Appice, he's on there, so they got a lot of great talent on the label.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. Yeah, absolutely. It's like if you're a music fan, if you're a rock music fan, browsing through their catalog, you're bound to find 3 or 4 things that you definitely are going to dig.
Well, Jeremy, as you can tell, I've talked your head off, and I could talk to you all day because I just love to talk about music. But
same too. I think we're both music geeks. We could be boring everybody for 6 hours.
Yeah. So I will let you go because I know you're busy and it's late where you are. But thanks for taking time to do this. The interview we just did, I'm planning to post it within the next 2 weeks. Once I have a date that it's going up, I will be sure to let Chip know, and feel free to share it anywhere you want. And I'm sure once Volume 2 drops, we'll be doing this again. So let's keep in touch, okay?
That sounds great. Hey, man, I appreciate it so much.
Anytime. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.